Hello ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Welcome back to Force Strategy Gaming. I'm going to be showing you a 2v2 strategy today. Today we're going to be looking at a match from myself and my buddy Tempest. You can see Tempest over here as the teal Protoss player, and here I am, the purple Terran Ekrof. This is obviously one of my alternate accounts, Ekrof being forced backwards. But anyways, yes, we're going to be looking at a 2v2 strategy today. Now the map that we're taking a look at in particular is Kadarin Depths, I believe it is. You can see right here in between both of our bases, we do have these destructible rocks, a kind of shared entrance. I mean, we both have entrances to our respective bases, but there's kind of a shared entrance, these destructible rocks with a high yield as well. Now you can see across the board, here are our opponents. There are two Zerg players, so this is going to be a T and P versus double Z 2v2. And what we decided to do in this matchup, I'm actually just going to go straight into myself or Tempest. I guess it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to go straight into our revision. What our plan was here, we knew we were against double Zerg, so what are we going to do? Well, we're going to try to do something that actually works well against a single Zerg opponent. We're going to think kind of mentally in a 1v1 scenario and then kind of incorporate that into our 2v2 since we are against double Zerg. So what we're both going to do is actually, Tempest himself here is going to go for a Forge Fast Expand, and then for me, what I'm going to actually end up doing is I'm going to be doing a, just opening up with a Reaper and then going into a basically tank and marine push. That's what we're going to plan to do respectively, and we're going to incorporate scouting and basically just take a look at what happens throughout the course of the game to figure out precisely what we're going to do. So as you can see, Tempest scouting out here, seeing no extractor, seeing no pool, kind of leading us to believe that, hey, there must be an expansion coming out, and lo and behold, look at that. He is in fact going ahead and dropping down an Expo. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be opening up with a pretty standard opener, except I'm going to be going, instead of for that early marine, into a factory right away. I'm going to be delaying that factory a little bit to get out a Reaper. I really like Reaper openings in team games. I'll tell you why specifically. It helps a lot against a lot of cheese. Early Reapers can help a lot against super early Zergling pushes. Zergling Marine pushes, Reapers are actually pretty decent against. But specifically what we're looking at against right now, against our opponents who are double Zerg, we're worried about early Speedlings and also early Banelings. So opening up with the Reaper is going to be very effective, but the reason is twofold. Not only is the Reaper effective against those units, but the Reaper itself is also going to do a really nice job of scouting early game. So yeah, my build's going to be pretty standard. I started this off, this particular replay. I'm going to make sure I show you the build orders. Also, the build orders for both of us are going to be in the video description below, but the build order itself isn't important. For example, Tempest typically in a Forge Fast Expand would not be getting this order. He would have gotten this Nexus by now already, but since we have these destructible rocks to contend with, he had to alter his build order a little bit, get a double cannon and that gateway prior to actually dropping his Expo. So our build orders are going to be altered depending on the scenario and what we're dealing with. You can see I'm going to start off with this bunker because after I open up with this one Reaper that's going to be used for scouting purposes, I'm going to in fact be following it up by getting some Marines into this bunker for some early game defense. Something else to note, you may wonder, hey, why does Tempest have these cannons so far away? Wouldn't they be much better hugging the wall? Well, yes, they would, but again, we're kind of altering our build based on the map, and on this map, he wanted them a little bit further back because that was his only means of destroying these destructible rocks. So you can see right now, moving out with my Reaper, I'm going to be trying to get some scouting information, and again, the reason for this Reaper is twofold. I'm going to try to harass, get a couple kills, but I also want to see what they're doing, what their plan are. You can see I scouted the layer right now. I also saw that the drone count over here was very low, so I'm like, let me check that Expo. You can see that I actually did catch that Expo crossing in between, but it's very peculiar as to why his drone count is so low. The main reason is probably going to be the amount of Zerglings that they were pumping out early to try to do a bit of harassment. But yeah, moving up and around, just again, going to be trying to do some scouting and get what intel I can. Now you can see back in the base, I'm preparing that transition already. I already have that second barracks out right now. I'm going to be pumping out Marines. I also have that factory coming out with that tech lab right now. And taking a look here back at the Reaper, doing what he can. He's already sitting on 3 kills, so definitely can't complain about that. Doing a solid job. You may ask why I didn't jump right back up right away, because I knew Zerglings were probably sitting right up top there. And that's pretty much the last thing that I would actually want to walk into. So yeah, just moving around, trying to do as much harassment and as much scouting as possible. Back in the base, you can see Tempest has in fact come up with that expansion right now. We're feeling fairly well fortified right now. The only thing that would be a major concern right now is if they had like mass Speedling Baneling and they tried to bust through. A Roach push, not too concerned, especially with these bunker and these cannons back here. But again, the thing is that with the scouting, we're able to figure out what they're doing. I had a little bit of a mishap. I concentrated too much on this Expo instead of going back into Blue's base to see exactly what he had going on. But we expected that expansion anyway because of the timing and the lack of pool and or extractor when Tempest initially scouted here. So here we go. We're preparing our transition. I'm going to be doing, like I said, going for kind of mass marine and tank as well. Tempest is actually going to end up going for a 6-gate and a level 1 upgrade push. And that's what our plan, that's what our MO is basically. Again, you can see that he does have this Nexus up right now, basically ready to rock, and to get that saturated and start to work on that as well. He should be dropping his additional gateway sometime soon as well. Now taking a look over here, you can see an engineering bay coming out. Keep in mind, you know, when we're against a double Zerg, one of the major concerns is going to be, hey, Muta is likely to hit the board. I saw that pretty quick layer, and I was concerned about Muta's coming out the Spire, and we basically just intuitively thought that that would be the case, and look what we have here. There is the Spire, as expected, and those are the kind of things that, you know, as you play the game and as you progress as a player, you kind of learn what is likely to be coming. You can see dropping that reactor here in the barracks, and I'm just going to be pumping up Marines. I'm gonna plan to stick on one base until we push. During the push is when I'm going to plan on expanding, and if the push goes well, then we're going to be in a really good spot. If the push doesn't go well, then the expansion might have to be delayed. But either way, it's very likely that during the push you'll have time to expand, so that's when I plan, that's when I intend on doing it. Saving up a bit of resources, but that is because I am just about to drop that expansion and get basically ready to rolling out with all of that. Taking a look for Tempest here, you can see he does have these 5 gateways up here. There's the 6, and here is number 7. The level 1 upgrade is coming on through right now. And he is just going to continue to macro up, keeping up that constant production. One thing that I will say that we didn't do here was that next level of scouting. Definitely wanted to get some additional scouting outdone by this point. Unfortunately, I should have probably come out with a Reaper, a second Reaper besides that first one that moved out, to get some additional scouting on, but we didn't actually end up doing that. I do think I dropped a scan. There we go. Dropping that scan right now. Seeing that infestation pit, we pretty much know, all right, once that gets into play, what we're doing isn't going to be nearly as effective. We know they both have expos up. So that was basically the decision at that point. It's like, okay, he's got that. How about we go ahead and push? You can see me dropping down those depots. We're going to be picking up the army here, trying to continue up production. Again, trying to keep those resources nice and low as possible. Something else I want to mention here, for both of our sakes, as a Protoss player, as Tempest here, and myself as a Terran player, once you get up and running and you've got all your productions off of one base, you really got to make sure you're constantly producing your supply depots and constantly producing your pylons. Otherwise, you're definitely going to hit supply blocks. So here's the push now. Something else in team games, one thing that's really important for you to keep in mind, and one thing that's really important for you to consider, is that you really need to stick together. You don't want your armies to split up, because that is probably the worst situation that can happen. I expect a proxy pylon. There we go. There's a probe coming down, so I expect Tempest to drop a proxy pylon to allow for quick reinforcements, because during all of this we want to make sure we are constantly producing and keeping things nice and tight. So you can see right here, Tempest getting surrounded by the Zerglings. I'm going to be pulling those Marines up to help him as well. I'm going to be stimming up and moving up those Marines to help him, and there you go. This push is going to be really devastating as a TNP team versus a double Zerg team if you can time it right. One of the biggest things is that with that Forge Fast Expand plus that early bunker, in addition to that Reaper Scout, you're really going to have a great idea of what they're doing, and you're going to be pretty well defended on this particular map. This is a really good map for the basic strategy that we showed you. And that's something else to consider too. You really got to tailor your builds and what you're doing based on the map. This worked because of where we are. Again, we have those double starting bases right next to each other with that shared middle there at that high yield. And that's the only reason we're able to go for a Forge Fast Expand plus a 1-base Marine tank push. But yeah, it can be very effective. Just make sure you keep up your scouting. When you push out, make sure you guys stick together. Also try to do builds that are going to complement each other. Make sure that you're safe. As an example, I would have not wanted to fast expand as well as Tempest. Tempest, again, went for that Forge Fast Expand. Had I fast expanded as well, we would have been very, very vulnerable. But because I just went for Marine tank, had those tanks early in the game, and had this bunker up here with those Marines, we were fairly safe with those cannons. We were fairly safe against any big pushes. The next concern is that as Tempest is rearing up for his 7-gate, and he would have normally done a 6-gate, but since he was at a high yield, we decided to go for a 7-gate instead. As Tempest was rearing up for the 7-gate, he was also very vulnerable to types of harass, for example, like Mutalisk harass. So how am I going to basically assist him with that? Well, I'm heavy Marine, and that's going to do just fine against early game Mutalisk. At the most, he's going to have 6-7 Mutalisk with his first initial Muta push, and a small group of Marines is more than enough to take care of that, especially with stim packs. So there you have it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. It wasn't a perfect game. This was actually our first game, and I hadn't played in quite some time, but still, it worked obviously fairly well. We are Masters 2v2. I think last I checked, we were like rank 8 masters that in our whatever division or whatever the hell you want to call it. But this is definitely high level 2v2 play for what it's worth anyways. So there you go, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. A nice little 2v2 strategy. Again, I did show the build orders for both of us respectively at the beginning of the match. I'm going to be showing it here in a little wrap-up synopsis as well. Go ahead and have those come in. And then you can also check the video description below. But again, keep in mind, build orders aren't the most important of things because they do shift based on what you're scouting, what your opponents are, what's going on, the map that you're playing on. There's so many things that shift up the build orders. The most important thing is to make sure that you get buildings nice and tight, you get them as soon as you can, and that you're constantly producing out of whatever buildings you get. And if you follow those general guidelines, you should be pretty much all set. So there you have it, guys. As always, make sure if you like the content, you do go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and keep watching and keep owning.